to extortion, illegal gambling, arson, loan sharking, and labor racketeering.
Faces of the accused because they are presumed to be innocent. This sweep, more than 100, New York, New Jersey, Rhode Island, involving 7 mob families, the 5 New York families, the Gambino, Genovese, Colombo, Bonanno, and Lucchese families, as well as the smaller New Jersey family, the Cavalcantes. They are believed to be the inspiration for The Sopranos, and in New England, as well as a slew of bookies, middle management, and other...
So here's the proof, huh? Give the story because it's better than the truth, huh? Allegories will keep between me and you, huh? We get coins, never scraps. See this a Bitcoin getting cat, so here's the proof, huh? Give the story because it's better than the truth, huh? Allegories will keep between me and you, huh? We get coins, never scraps. See this a Bitcoin getting cat, so join. Started federal, grabbed a Colombo, see proof of work, I made it legible. Move out to cyber, was keeping crimes off of the web for you. Started a special group, yeah, I went private. Fell in love with Bitcoin and started mining. That's when I started shining. Getting green, dropping gems, rocking the comic club, got them sent. They laugh, popping limbs. Give them life, here's the boost. Gotta put in the work, here's the proof. So here's the proof, huh? Give the story because it's better than the truth, huh? Allegories will keep between me and you, huh? We get coins, never scraps. See this a Bitcoin getting cat, so here's the proof, huh? Give the story because it's better than the truth, huh? Allegories will keep between me and you, huh? We get coins, never scraps. See this a Bitcoin getting cat, so join, get it back.
And we're back. What's going on, everybody? Welcome, Anthony Cumia, Craig Handler, back to the show. I know we just did a show on Tuesday, Craig, so thanks for coming back so quickly.
And that freaking intro song is still stuck in my phone.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, the guy who made that, he nailed it. I was really impressed with. I gave him this kind of like description, and when he came back with it, I was kind of blown away.
It's so good. Yeah, it covers everything.
It's going to be played in the background when I'm eulogized one day, I think. It's like my send-off video for life's accomplishments. Yeah, Anthony, thanks for joining. I know you had a show today, right? How'd that go?
Yeah, I did a show today. Well, my circus that I run over there at Compound Media. Kevin Brennan and Bob Levy. So I was very busy today. It's like the lion handler. Yeah,
I just see the clips. Yeah, I see the clips, and it's nuts. You're dealing with a lot of different personalities there, strong personalities, as they say.
Yeah, and they're comics, and comics can be a little insane. Yeah, good time though.
A lot of emotional issues to deal with.
Yes,
that go along with it.
Yeah. Alcohol too, sure.
Yeah, then you mix in the alcohol, and then it all comes out.
Yes.
Speaking of which, I found out I'll be featuring at this weekend at McGuire's. I didn't know if you'd be out there. Christy's going to be out there.
Yeah, I heard.
Julie was asking me. She's like, "Well, is Ant going to go?" I was like, "Yeah, he shows up a lot of the time." So I don't know if you're going to make the trip out there this weekend.
Yeah, I don't even know. Me with it's got to be spur of the moment because who knows what I did the night before that prevents me from doing anything the next day. So I don't know.
It's
try to get out there though.
Series of decisions that start early in the weekend for you that cascade into whether or not you'll be there. Well, I'm excited to be there. It should be a good show. Christy always draws a great crowd.
Oh, yeah.
The last few shows I did out there were packed too. I think it's coming back. That's one of the things that since COVID, really, we haven't seen, whether or not this was going to return to the way it was. And you remember, oftentimes you'd have 2 shows on a Friday or especially on a Saturday, but COVID messed that all up, of course, but we're starting to see the crowds come back. So the last few weeks have been really great crowds. So I'm excited for this winter.
That's good. God, I'm so, I do not miss those internet shows or the show at the drive-in where people put on their windshield wipers to applaud and stuff. Remember that debacle? Stand-up just couldn't work where you couldn't have people in a club and not wearing masks, because that's the only way it works too. You can't have them in a club with masks on or anything. It's just a clusterfuck. So,
yeah. We're not. I mean, maybe the technology will get there at some point, but we're definitely not there yet.
Ain't there?
I'm thinking some form of really immersive real life virtual reality would be the
Mhm.
closest we're going to get, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, people in person with masks on or plexiglass around the stage or Zoom is just an abomination.
It
It's
was
really
terrible.
difficult, really difficult. But yeah,
We found out what doesn't work for stand-up comedy.
yeah,
So
yep, 100%, 100%. Now we know. We tried it. Like I always say on stage, I give James and everyone credit because they were trying to save comedy. They were trying to
yeah.
keep it going. The clubs were closed forever.
Yep.
So you don't know until you try. But I think trying it, I think everyone realized it actually became a thing where people were becoming good Zoom comics. And I'm like, yeah, that's a
Yeah.
thing. But if you think about it in the age of TikTokers and things like that, that could be its own thing in the future.
Yeah.
Because
It definitely works in short form, quick hits. I don't think a comic can do an entire act where maybe some of the stories are a lot longer than just a
yeah,
quick one-liner. I don't see that working online.
no.
It's a little weird.
No. Yep. Yeah, for sure. Well, we'll see. I'm hoping this winter, this will be the real test because now everything's closed down in Long Island. There's nothing else to do. So people
Mhm.
tend to come out in droves
Yep.
in the wintertime. It's kind of a nice thing to look. One of the rare things I look forward to in New York. Speaking of which, you're going to be, is this your last New York winter officially, do you think?
I think so. Better be. Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Going
Lucky
down
you.
to South
Lucky you.
Carolina.
Oh,
Yeah, I know.
so
Believe me.
jealous. So jealous.
I tell you, I still will be coming back to New York a lot for business and relatives and friends and whatnot. So that's why I'm kind of invested in this election coming up
Yeah.
on Tuesday. I mean, uh, Lee Zeldin is the last chance New York has.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not even hyperbole at this point. It's
Yeah.
he's the first viable Republican candidate we've had since Pataki. I mean, let me know the name of another Republican candidate for governor since Pataki. You don't know it. I mean, Cuomo's just he
Yeah.
kept winning, and we got this opportunity where Cuomo's out, Hochul comes in as lieutenant governor, and she's just a
Yeah.
friggin'
Backup
mental
Monster.
patient.
quarterback.
Monster.
Yeah. Like sit down and keep the seat warm until another
Yep.
guy is elected to office,
Yeah.
and she's
Yeah.
legislating like she was, appointed pope. And Zeldin he really does seem to have ideas of what it would take to fix New York. And man, if New York blows this one, I don't know. I don't know.
Well,
Yeah, but yeah. Go ahead,
I
Greg.
never thought it would even be as close as it is.
Yeah.
So the fact that it is, I think, is very telling about how New Yorkers are feeling,
Right.
How the Democrats and complete Democrat control of the state, because it's not just the governor, it's the assembly as
Absolutely. Yeah.
well, has impacted our daily lives,
Mhm.
and it's scary. I mean, the arrogance, the belief that through passing laws and legislation that they can control the way people
Yeah.
act and think and transact business, and I
And
think
the blatant
it's
lying too.
yes,
Like
yeah,
blatant in your face lying to the voters. I don't know who
Well, it's
doesn't
all the
see it.
half. It's the lying and it's the half truths. I love the fact that there was a White House tweet that got fact
Oh
checked and then
yes,
taken down after,
beautiful.
and that's all that anybody wants with this Twitter takeover or this or Elon's purchase of Twitter
Yeah,
is that I don't see anybody center or right of center calling for the banning or shadow banning or throttling or otherwise censoring of anybody with a difference of opinion. We're all just saying we just want the rules applied equally.
to
And
everyone,
so
right?
if you're going to fact check politicians, which I think is kind of a strange sort of, the idea that you can determine what's fact and not, people seem to think that's a lot easier than not. But I'm all for adding context. I think adding proper context would be helpful. But if you're going to do that, that should be applied equally to both sides.
Hmm.
And it shouldn't be something reserved for just people commenting on things that that you want to steer and guide and shape opinion in a direction that you want. So if it's applied equally, we see
Right.
exactly what happened. White House comes out with a tweet which says, "Oh my God, biggest Social Security check ever you're going to get," and the context is like, yeah, because it factors in inflation, and inflation is at record highs. And they're like, oh, delete. And that's important because people reading that, if there's going to be some sort of information you might want to know, that's going to be what you're going to want to know is why is it biggest ever? Is it because this administration is so generous, or is it because when you factor in inflation, what was the other tweet that there was another tweet that came out recently? It was the same kind of thing. This one's going around, which I haven't seen fact checked yet. Technically, true, I think, which is that the largest gun rates are highest. Crimes committed by guns are highest. Violent crime is highest. Crime is highest in red states.
I saw this.
And it's been floating around the last couple of days. And it's like, well, it's interesting. And then when you break it down, you go, but they're all of the statistics, all of the crime is coming from the cities in these red states, and these cities are all Democrat controlled and happen. So again, is it technically true? Yes, right. That it is, but it's not coming from the 99% of the other cities and population in the state. It's coming from a very specific population centered on cities that have been dominated by Democrats. So there should be a contextual, if you're going to go this route, there should be this, while true, the 10 states they're listing here is true. The crimes coming from these 10 cities, which have been under Democrat control for the last, 1,000 years.
Yeah.
So I think once that starts happening, if and when that starts happening, what that'll force everyone to do is think twice about tweeting a half truth or lie, because they're going to deal with, well, if I do, it's really embarrassing to have a context added to it where I have to take it down. And the dick slap happened with the White House last week, which they were reeling on. I think the comment from the press secretary was it was an incomplete tweet.
Incomplete.
It was deliberately incomplete.
Yes.
Social Security thing. It was deliberately incomplete.
And what was also in that tweet wasn't just that Social Security checks will be higher, and more money in them. It was also, it said, because of Joe Biden's policy, right? And again, someone pointed out, hey, that's kind of true too, because if it wasn't for the high inflation, but the president that signed that into law was Richard Nixon. So it goes for literally a half a century or longer that this has been in place, and you can't just say, hey, look what we did for you. It's a lie. It's dishonest. Even if there's an element of truth to it, the purposeful deception that they pull, and they constantly do it. Again, reading about Hochul, where she's talking about Zeldin not voting for certain bills, and they all have those holier-than-thou names, these bills. The Inflation Reduction Act. He didn't vote for the Inflation Reduction Act. Yeah.
And more money in your pocket act. He voted against that.
And it's just deceptive. It's a lie, and it's manipulative, and that's what they're doing. Of course he didn't sign it, because it's a climate change pork barrel, just full of shit.
How about that there is a rule that if your act doesn't contain at least 2/3 of what the title of the act is addressing, it cannot be named that. So if you name something, they call it the Inflation Reduction Act, the 3/4 of it relates to climate change. Then even it's like buying it's to serve man, right? You're buying a book with a title that you're like, I didn't think it meant that at all. Like this act, who wouldn't vote for the inflation reduction? That's like they voted against the anti-crime bill. What are you pro-crime? It's insane. It's like, no, if you actually look at it, it's full of shit.
The anti-crime bill that the Democrats were pushing, and I guarantee you they come up with these things just so during elections they could say he didn't vote for it. They don't care if it passes or not. They just so they could look at their opponent and go, look what he didn't sign, the anti-crime bill. And they're trying to tell people that because they didn't sign it, that the Democrats have been more pro-cop and more anti-crime than the Republicans, which we all know is garbage. But they say it, and in the bill were a bunch of things, social programs, wasted money, more things about elimination of bail around cities and letting criminals go. So of course you're not going to sign it. then they just throw it out there like he didn't sign the anti-crime bill. He must be for crime. You got to be an idiot to not see through it.
Yeah, but that's on us, right? Because, and this is what I think an advanced civilization has to have one of two things. Like when we finally make contact and we make contact with an advanced civilization, it's going to be a civilization that solved one of two problems. They're going to find a way to extend the lifespan of humans, which is their life for humanoids, which is unlikely and presents a lot of other problems. Or the second one is they're going to find a way to take your collective knowledge and export it upon death and import it into new souls, new people.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I think the problem is that we all start out at this as this blank slate, and we're going to get into the gun law conversation because I think many of us start out with this idea. And then as you get the experience and the wisdom that goes along with seeing things repeat over and over, for example, what you just described about the bills, that's something I probably didn't realize until I was in my 20s. You know, I was probably like,
yes.
And so when I'm talking to someone who's younger, I'm looking at it through their lens going, oh, they're still kind of naive about how manipulated they actually are by these politicians on both sides. And when you see it happen over and over and over, then you start to go, oh, I'm going to smarten up about what this bill is, because whatever the title is, I don't even care anymore what the title is.
The
title's irrelevant. I look at it like as I look at it as the only thing the title tells me is what emotional strings you're trying to pull on me to get me to distract from what's probably in it. And that's probably true 99% of the time. So if we could find a way to do that, you know, to learn that and pass that on from generation, we would be smarter as voters.
Yeah, like you're saying also, we will talk about the gun issue. They called it the SAFE Act in New York. And it does nothing to make anyone safer.
Well,
you don't want to be safe, Craig? Do you want to be safe, Craig?
He didn't sign the SAFE Act.
And it's called the Concealed Carry Improvement Act.
Act. What?
Dick. I mean,
improvement for who?
It's
all
absurd.
Of it.
But you know, they've taken a page out of the Joseph Goebbels book. You know, he said if you tell a big enough lie and repeat it enough, people will eventually believe it. And that's exactly what the Democrats are doing. They repeat the same lies over and over again. And unfortunately, I don't think it's just a matter of voters being dumb. I think a lot of it is, I don't know if you caught the debate between Hochul and Zeldin.
Oh, yeah.
All she had against him was Donald Trump.
Donald Trump.
That's it.
Bringing that up.
And the people who are going to vote against him, that's all they give a shit about.
They care, I know.
Yeah.
You know, he supported
Donald
Trump.
The abortion issue. Those are the two things.
That too, right. Although crime and the economy, they say, have now surpassed.
When you're on the subway platform in New York City, are you worrying about access to abortion, or
when you're about to be raped, you are.
Or someone pushing you? Well, maybe you're right. Someone pushing you on the tracks, you know.
That poor jogger, right? The New York Post just said that poor jogger. She was probably thinking about, is abortion legal while being viciously raped? Unfortunately, she should be thinking about, how did this happen? How does this happen where I'm being sexually assaulted by just going out and jogging at 5:30 in the morning? And rest assured, I'm pretty sure that guy was not up early. I think he was just up late. And stumbled across her, and she's got to, that's horrible. But you're right. But Craig, to your point, the shitty thing is that it has to get, for those issues to actually surpass the other issues, especially the Trump issue, it has to become so bad.
Yeah.
In New York, people don't live. Anyone listening to this outside of New York, I wish I lived in a swing state. I think that's probably a pretty amazing feeling, knowing that your vote actually counts. I mean, I went out and voted, of course, but it's very rare for states like New York and a very small handful of other states that it doesn't matter. Like Anthony, you said Cuomo, who was the heir apparent for the last how many years, who during COVID created Cuomo-sexuals because they were so in love with his COVID policy. As he was sending old people back into murder houses to say, you got to accept these people back in here, and covering it up in the process. And and his brother on CNN running the propaganda portion of that. He gets busted, right? Sexual harassment, all these other things, which, by the way, and I've said repeatedly that from what I remember, it's a while now, I think half of that was bullshit anyway.
Yeah,
I think it was all bullshit.
Yep.
The only thing that makes me happy is the equal application of the rules. That's the only reason I was glad that happened, was that if you're going to play this stupid game and you're going to throw this on people you don't like, then eventually it's going to come full circle on you. And that's the only way, hopefully, people go, we got to get rid of this all together. But he does that. We have the backup quarterback comes in, our current governor, and you're like, well, this is only going to be temporary. This is our big opportunity, and it's still going to be a dogfight. And you know, and a underdog for sure for Zeldin. I don't care what I see. I don't believe anything that shows he's ahead, because New York never ceases to amaze me with how willing they're just to vote in the direction that is so contrary to what, you know, we had with under Giuliani, which was like, by comparison, like a paradise. New York City was like a fucking paradise. Those are the years I was working as an agent in Manhattan. And when Giuliani left as mayor, we're not even talking with governors, as mayor, you saw what happened under de Blasio. And I always tell the story, and this is true. The last day I was at the FBI, I was leaving, walking to my car, and there was a guy taking a shit next to the Supreme Court building, the famous Law and Order Supreme Court building that's behind the 26 Federal Plaza, in broad daylight. And I said, man, how the fuck did this happen? Because I was in the city for 11 years and I never saw stuff. And it happened over that year or two when he was elected, and how quickly suddenly the homeless started to take over. And next thing you know, there's a guy shitting on the Law and Order building, you know, in broad daylight, as people pretend not to see it.
When you start allowing things to happen, allowing people to jump turnstiles for the subway system, that used to be an arrestable offense. When people jumped the turnstile in New York City under Giuliani, they cuffed you and brought you to the precinct. You were under arrest, not a ticket, not a desk appearance ticket. You were arrested. That kept that person from doing anything bad on the platform, because they're not on the platform now. There isn't one crime that has taken place, a violent crime, on a subway platform where the person paid to get on that fucking platform.
No,
it just doesn't happen.
Starts there.
And yes, something has to be done. But then if you start like these liberal politicians do, they make a racial thing about it. They bring the race angle, that it isn't fair, that people shouldn't have to pay. And if they jump turnstiles, it's because they need to get to work or school, and you're preventing them. And it's bullshit. It's people that are up to no good jumping turnstiles.
It's stuff we want to believe. I want to believe. I just talked about that, right? The collective wisdom. It's not that I think as I get older, people get older. I'm a very generous, for the people who know me, and I'm a very generous person,
lover.
Right? Yeah, I'm a generous lover. That's my biggest fault as a husband is I'm just too generous. I'm like, no, don't worry about me. But and I think, you know, that goes true for a lot of my friends who believe the same things we do. We're actually sort of like closet givers, right? We're closet sort of like, we want to help people out, but we're not delusional. We're not delusional to believe that this could all be solved by allowing people to jump turnstiles. If it were that simple, I wouldn't care. I'd pay extra if it was that simple. If jumping turnstiles would prevent a sexual assault or a rape. But what we've learned, and what we learned through experience, is that it's actually the opposite of that. It's that those things are like the red flags, like this guy who was arrested 25 times and now raped this woman, this poor woman.
Yeah.
What we've learned is that the odds are, and for those of us who worked in the criminal justice system, you know, unfortunately, the recidivism rate, the people who get arrested for these things, the likelihood of them changing is so minimal. It's not the movies. It's not the guy who just needs a job and all of a sudden he's going to show up and be like, unfortunately, it's not like that. And you know, you've talked to my wife 1,000 times about this in terms of prosecution of juveniles. And it was so disheartening for her, where she would have juveniles that she deliberately, as a prosecutor, gave breaks to, tried to get them in facilities to help them, got them mentorship, got them all the things. And then she'd come home 6 months later and be like, hey, remember this guy? Yeah. Yeah, he's dead. He was shot, killed, or he just murdered somebody. And I'm like,
right.
That's the guy that you gave up your Saturday for, right? I remember we were hanging out with a party and you left and you went and you did all these things. And I remember one time, like, she literally gave this person clothes. It was a girl. And I'm like, so it's hard because at some point you go, well, do I just become somebody who lives in a fantasy world of that this is how you change it? Or then you start looking at other things going, well, you mentioned the turnstile hopping and saying that person jumped the turnstile and didn't do it again. The other part of that is the deterrent impact on the others watching.
Yeah.
Because when I'm watching other people commit crimes and no one else is doing anything, it emboldens everyone else who's looking around. Remember that expression as a kid, right? Locks keep honest people honest, right? Yep. I'm not delusional enough to believe that under the right circumstances, we all could do crazy shit. So I understand the importance of having rules and boundaries in place to keep us all on the straight and narrow. And for people that have lived a life of crime, when they see someone hop a turnstile or punch someone in the face in the subway and they're released on cashless bail an hour later, what is the message? The message is, oh, this isn't serious to society anymore. Like, this isn't a if this was a serious problem, they wouldn't let me back out. And then that feeds more and more people.
Well, and that there are no consequences for your action.
No consequences. Give us something, people. I don't think they mind sitting in a precinct for a couple of hours before they get let out without having to post any bail whatsoever. And look, you might have this impression that criminals are just mindless and they wander around and don't care about anything. No, if they were going to jail and had to get bailed out and have to appear on that charge, or there will be a warrant for their arrest, and they're gonna go, I'll at least not be as obvious with my crimes. Right. Yeah. Now I could jump a turnstile, I could bash someone in the face, steal their cell phone and wallet, and if I get caught, it's no real big deal. They're taking that thought process of consequence out of the criminals' minds because they could do whatever they want, and they're proving it.
Last time I was in the city, I was in Penn Station, and I saw 3 dudes jump a turnstile with 2 cops standing 5 feet away, pretending not to see.
They've told,
and I know people live in other cities. Yeah, people live in other cities probably can't imagine that, but it's really happening in New York City. Where cops are like, if I get involved in this is going to be bad for me in 100 different ways. So I'm just going to pretend it's not happening. And all the people commuting or going to work, we're all just like uncomfortable, kind of walk away like, all right, well, 3 dudes just jumped the turnstile. They didn't look like they were headed to their jobs. And so then you're like, all right, well, I'm just going to walk the other way too. But it emboldens. And this leads to the whole Second Amendment discussion. And so the reason why, and I think people who hate guns, right? I think we all hate guns. Like I hate the idea that somebody could pull a gun on me or my family and end our lives in a fraction of a second. And of course,
I hate people. I don't hate the guns. The guns are cool as shit.
Yeah.
It's the people that suck.
Well, I guess I'm realistic about that fact that people do suck, and that the gun part of it, it's like, so we live in a world that is highly imperfect. And I live in a state, and especially was working in a city that is incredibly imperfect when it comes to crime. And so the idea that our forefathers provided for that and said, well, regardless of your size, your age, you should be able to defend yourself. And we're going to provide that in the Constitution in unequivocal terms, so that when I go to the city with my family, or I go to the city by myself, and something happens, that I have a fighting chance to make my way out of that alive. And then when you have cities that go out of their way to say, we're going to be really soft on crime, and then we're going to also restrict your ability to defend yourself. That to me is where I don't understand that when I talk to people.
And we're going to defund the police.
Right. At the same time,
to put the criminals back on the street. We're going to strip the authority and funding for the people who are there, who are supposedly to quote unquote protect you. And we're going to eliminate your right to defend yourself and your loved ones.
It's a perfect recipe.
Triple whammy there.
Yeah.
And I haven't heard a compelling argument when people say, well, what do you need a gun for? And then I explain what I just explained.
Yeah.
And I haven't heard a compelling argument of why I should leave it to chance that when I go to the city that a cop or someone's going to be near me and willing to help me or my family, as opposed to saying I'm a responsible adult. Why can't I just?
Because I'll tell you why, Benny. I'll tell you why. Because the second something happens and a citizen goes to protect themselves, it will turn into the Wild West. Yes, everyone, the Wild West. They think Yosemite Sam just shooting up in the air and blasting, and it's going to be worse than it would be just letting innocent victims get shot in Times Square, get clubbed over the head in the subway, get
raped
pushed
while
on the
jogging,
tracks, raped while jogging. It could be so much
worse
if you allowed people to defend themselves with the best tools available to give them equal footing with the people that wish to do them harm. So, Vinny, I don't know what you're talking about. It could be so much
worse.
Oh,
yeah, which is, I guess, what's the example? And then when they cite, and that's the problem, when they cite the examples of other cities or other places, and you're like, again, those shootings are not happening by. I always look when a shooting happens. My concern is whether the person was a legal carrier or not.
Very rarely, man.
And it's very rare that happens. Now, people will say, well, did you know domestics?
Never.
Right. And this is the kind of the fallacy of it, right? There's something like 30,000 gun-related fatalities in the country each year, which sounds like a lot until you consider there's over 300 million weapons in the country. It's a phenomenally infinitesimally small number.
And guess how many of them are NRA members?
Right,
like members.
Exactly.
Zero.
Exactly. Incredibly small. So the idea that the rest of us have to give up the ability to defend ourselves to somehow hope that within a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades, the guns are removed from the planet.
Like
right?
Drugs.
Because exactly. Because the war on drugs has been so effective. That we're gonna find a way to say we're gonna ban guns, and then the 300 million plus are gonna either the bad guys are gonna turn them in, or they're gonna slowly get arrested and be taken off the street. But what happens in that like 50 years of us running around completely defenseless as we're being slaughtered? Like we just gotta ride it out and say, oh God, I hope that was his last magazine of ammo that he shot me with, because thank God, maybe that's one less, bullet. Like I'm not willing to endure. If it was 10 guns, maybe we could talk about rewriting the Constitution. We're talking about 300 million guns in this country. It's a fundamental part of. Well, let's forget the tyranny side of it for a moment. Let's just talk about the self-defense. I'm just strictly because that's the part. By the way, nobody wants to talk about the government overreach and the real reasoning behind the Second Amendment. We just want to talk about what do you need a gun for, Vinny? What do you need a gun for day to day? And Anthony, you remember this because we became friends back in 2008, and I came into the bureau in 2004 or 5 when I got out of the academy, and I was still relatively new. And my thought process at the time was definitely more of like, well, I can carry this because I'm a highly trained FBI agent. I shot 5,000, 10,000 rounds at Quantico. And then I started thinking about it more, like as I started carrying every day, just not like on the job, but like as I was going out with my family. And I'd have friends like Craig or other people, and I'd say, he seems like a responsible guy. Like, is there a reason why is there a reason he couldn't be as proficient in the basics? And not you, Craig, you're former military, so you would be obviously more qualified, but just a regular person. Anthony, right? Anthony, I knew you were a concealed carry guy forever. Is there a reason why Anthony couldn't be as proficient in all the things that he would need to know to defend himself or his family? I'm not talking about arrest scenarios,
no, of course
transporting prisoners, which is like 3/4 of what our training is. I'm just talking about handling a weapon safely. And I started realizing, like, why am I allowed to go out and feel comfortable that when I go out with my family, I can defend them, but he's not allowed?
Why is that?
Why? Because I'm special? Because I'm an FBI agent? I'm not special. I'm not special in the sense that the Constitution doesn't look at me any differently.
Right. Yeah.
Right. The federal government may provide me certain privileges and responsibilities, but as a citizen, the Constitution looks at us the same. We're the same.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's when it started to turn in my mind, and I started to think about that and start to say, okay, yeah, for every example of some dumb fuck that you're like, oh, that guy really has a gun. I also look at those dumb fucks typically don't go and commit any significant crime with those weapons. And then on the flip side, there's 100 other people who are just like, I just want to protect myself and my family. And they, in my opinion, have that, and in the opinion of the drafters of the Constitution, have that same right that I would have as an FBI agent to do so, which is more important to me, became more important to me through the years than the ability to carry on the job, so to speak, was the ability to carry whenever, wherever I went, because I know I wouldn't need it in all likelihood. I wasn't delusional, but I knew that when we were in Atlantic City one night and we were being followed on the boardwalk, I was going to stand a fighting chance that my wife and I were going to leave, or I was going to at least take 3 or 4 of them with me, right? Not, oh, let's just run. Like, that would have been the other option. My wife and I fucking run. There's 3 guys clearly following us down the boardwalk at 2 a.m. And we're coming back from a casino and they're clearly following us and yelling shit at us. And so, which by the way, I always laugh at that because my wife and I debate on this all the time, but my wife becomes adamantly pro Second Amendment every time we're followed. Every time our life's in danger. First question, you have your gun, right? And I always fuck with her now. I'm like, oh no, I left it at home. You got uncomfortable with it, aren't you? You're kidding me, right? I'm like,
that's exactly the same way.
I love it.
Yeah. It's not a thing.
But I don't think, especially in light of what we're talking about with the election and the way the Democrats in general tend to run things when they're in control, we can't lose sight of that principal purpose behind the Second Amendment. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right to bear arms of the people shall not be infringed. This is the fundamental, the foundation of our country. And most people on the street today don't understand it. They don't know about it. They're not taught about it. They don't care about it. They think if they're in danger, the sky is going to open.
Right. There's something else.
Come down and save them. It's
even worse, Craig. It's not that. They've actually been convinced by the people who are the ones that are this target or subject of that it wouldn't matter. It's brilliant, right? So the government has convinced the people that we have tanks, we have planes, like guns,
right,
which is a complete fallacy.
Yes,
right. It's a complete fallacy. It's like somebody bluffing. Somebody has some really bad information, and you're telling them, "Oh, you think I care about that?" And you're totally bluffing because you're like, "Oh, that information would be really, really bad."
yeah.
And the government's convinced the population, and you see this repeated all the time. Well, you think you're going to take down a fucking B-2 bomber? It's like, that's not the point, you dumb shit. The point is that the war would be so bloody. It would be so vicious that the government can't simply strip away all of your rights with a stroke of a pen, that at some point, if the population rises up against the government, that would be enough of a détente, enough of a mutually assured destruction that it probably will prevent it from happening in the first place. But when I try to explain this to people, they look at it in sort of like and by the we have there's a military text. I'm like, half the people in the military would probably, in my opinion, would side with the civilian population.
Exactly.
They're family people. Like, they're citizens before they are soldiers. And at some point they're going to say, you want me to, it's like in the movie Outbreak when they're flying the bomber over that town and they're about to, vaporize incinerate it. Right. Like, at some point the pilot's like, and he swerves left.
I'd press that button. I wouldn't. I wouldn't hesitate.
But people
on your own population, though, on your own population, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Bags down there. No, I'm just kidding.
It's very hard. It's very hard for to garner public sympathy the government to garner public sympathy if you drill a cruise missile into a major city because they have guns and they're fighting, and it's like, well, you got missiles and tanks and they got nukes. It's like, yeah, but don't you understand, if it got to the point where the government and the military had to use those weapons against civilians, it's done. There's no more there's no one going, yay, good, they just fucking cruise missile this place. It's hard enough to when they what they did in Waco, for a government to do what they did in Waco, and that was shady, and the Davidians were fucking nuts, and
that was a group of what, 80
crazy.
people,
right? 80 people. Now you're rolling tanks into a town or a city where insurrectionists or revolutionaries are, and you're killing American citizens. Very difficult to then have a press conference the next day and justify what you just did. So that's the mutual assured destruction.
Although this administration would probably find a way to spin that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes, and they're working closer to that point.
Yeah.
By dehumanizing people who don't
we saw it during COVID, and we're seeing it now. Right?
Yeah.
Threat to democracy is the new 2 weeks to slow the curve. Threat to democracy has become the new, you're a threat to democracy. Everything's a fucking threat to democracy now.
Yeah. You have to be the monster. Like if the government decided they needed to, like I said, send tanks or cruise missiles, they would have to spend a lot of time before that demonizing every single person that they are going to kill with these amazing, fantastic weapons. They couldn't just do it because, these revolutionaries have a better idea for a government and they got support and everything. They need to make them, MAGA Republicans, anti-vaxxers, conspiracy theories, people that say Paul Pelosi had a hammer fight in his underwear. They need to demonize them, and we've seen that is effective. So perhaps they'll get to the point where they can blow up a city.
Surprising is that right now, this should be the heyday for the Second Amendment. Everybody should be like, oh yeah, this is exactly why it was written. And instead, they've convinced everyone that it's not needed. Meanwhile, you have division. You have a country that's been as divided as it's ever been in my lifetime. And I've talked to people that are said in their lifetime as well. You have people going on there saying, you don't think this can happen? At the peak insanity level of COVID, the sentiment became, this is a pandemic of the unvaccinated, and the largely accepted sentiment from the majority of people out there, in my opinion, was that if you are unvaccinated, you could die, and it really wouldn't. It's really, I wouldn't lose an ounce of fucking sleep over it. An ounce of sleep over it. Oh, you do not get hospital bed. You do not get medical treatment. You can't sit next to me. You can't go to the store. Oh, we should expand these restrictions and forget about public transportation. You shouldn't be allowed to do anything. So the idea that this couldn't happen, it's like every fucking episode of The Twilight Zone rolled into one. It's happening. Every single thing that Rod Serling predicts in sort of these moments of panic, the monsters of Maple Street, right? Oh, that could never happen. It not only it happened on a neighborhood level, it happened on a national level and international level, where you had Trudeau and others demonizing people who dared question or refuse to send their kids to get vaccinated.
Right.
And so that's the importance of the Second Amendment, is that at some point the government's going to turn on the entire population or a portion of the population, and that's supposed to be there as a barrier to to our extermination. And for right now, it might be people who think more along the lines that we think that it protects, but 20 years from now, it could be people on more along the lines of the way they think that might be at risk. You may get in a president that goes another direction. And suddenly the people who were pro-COVID vaccines, pro this, are now demonized to the point of they're like, round them up, execute them all.
Right.
Well, now those people are like, where's my fucking guns? Like, these people are coming for me. I just was caught up in the madness of COVID. And so there was a recent Supreme Court decision. Bruin, is it? That's how it's pronounced?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it was the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Kevin Bruen, who I believe is the superintendent of the New York State Police Department. The New York State Police are the ones who are they are the authority that oversees handgun licensing.
Okay.
So that's why they were named as the primary defendant.
Right.
And basically the case held in a nutshell that New York's requirement that a citizen applying for a concealed carry pistol permit must establish good
You're right back. Got
cause.
this. I can hear you though still.
All
Yeah,
right.
go ahead. Hopefully we can't hear you.
Must establish good cause in order to get the permit was unconstitutional. That a good cause requirement was nowhere in the history of the
Right.
Second Amendment, and that it was therefore unconstitutional. So, landmark decision. You know,
Yeah, it was huge because for people that don't know and don't live in states like enlightened states like New York is really one of approximately 6 states that's a May state.
A May issue.
May issue. And what that means is that they basically have reduced the Second Amendment to a privilege, not a right. They're basically saying we may issue it to you, but we don't, as opposed to a shall issue, which is basically the default is that you're going to get it. And then you have to do something incredibly stupid to warrant not getting it, which is the difference between a right and a privilege.
Right.
And so in New York, it is incredibly difficult for people to get a pistol permit to keep a pistol in your house is okay. Not really that difficult. To get a concealed carry one is difficult. And to get one that's concealed carry in New York City is like, you need influence. You need the blue check mark, which is the exact opposite of what the founding fathers would have wanted. Right. When you talk about, that's the place you want to carry the most is in the city, because that's the most dangerous place where I live. And so for decades and decades, New York has been one of these May issue states and has created a whole series of standards and hoops that everyone has to jump through in order to get a weapon. And finally, somebody challenged it with the recent shakeup on the Supreme Court. Someone challenged this and said, "Hey, what's the deal?" And then it was litigated, and it was a landmark decision. And Craig, you can talk about why it was a shocking and landmark decision. I wasn't even expecting when it happened. I was blown away. Oh, I think I lost Craig.
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay, you're back. There you go. Did you hear what I said?
I heard someone challenged it.
Right. And so explain why. And Craig's a lawyer, by the way. Craig's a practicing attorney. We met back in law school 20 something years ago. So, and Craig is a gun enthusiast and is someone who is, not a gun nut, but gun enthusiast. So explain why it was such a landmark decision. What was so special about this decision as compared to some of the other cases that have happened in the last 20 years?
It basically held that New Yorkers have a right to, law-abiding New Yorkers have a right to carry a concealed handgun for self-defense, and that in order to do so, they do not have to establish good cause. They do not have to establish that there's a clear and present danger on their life, that they carry large quantities of cash.
Right. They're famous.
Just all kinds of requirements that the state had imposed through, for like you said, decades. So rather than accepting that for what it was, the case doesn't hold that the state cannot require people to apply for a license and that it can't impose certain regulations. But so rather than accepting it, before we get to what New York did in response, which is mind blowing, to summarize that, it essentially the court told New York, get on fucking board with the rest of the country. You are no longer allowed to become a may state. You become a shall state, and figure out what's appropriate regulation in and around that. And so the standard before, and for the lawyers out there listening, there's different levels of scrutiny applied to constitutional cases depending on the sort of importance of the amendment, the importance of the Constitution, the public interest. And so what New York always did in the past was New York said, "Oh, we know about the Second Amendment, but we're going to look at this intermittent scrutiny level to validate our laws." So New York writes a law, and then the Supreme Court says we're going to apply intermittent scrutiny, which means
We're going to look at the public interest benefits of the law and see if it overwrites the individual benefits of concealed carry. And lo and behold, when they do that, what do they say every single time? New York and these other states have an interest in protecting the public, and we're going to defer to the legislatures on how to best do that, and that overrides the individual's ability to carry a weapon. And what this case turned around and said was that standard is completely inappropriate, and that we're no longer applying an intermediate standard of scrutiny. We're basically going to go to a standard which is, if this law impacts a fundamental constitutional right, which the Second Amendment clearly is, then we're going to say that the law itself is sort of the legislature speaking. The law itself is the founding fathers saying, we're taking this out of the hands of the legislature to decide. This is something that's been legislated, and the founding fathers decided that this is a right that is the right to keep and bear arms is so fundamental that it's a the language it uses is look at the text and history and tradition of the law. And what that means is you say, okay, so we're going to look historically at any of the things that are out there that restrict an individual's right to carry, and we're going to stick to that. And we're not going to make up a bunch of new fandangled shit that you think is more important than what the founding fathers decided. And so that was really bad for New York and 5 other states, including California, who have been pulling this scam on the Second Amendment for the last how many years by saying, oh, the legislature knows better. As for those of you listening, the legislature cannot pass laws that are diametrically opposed to the Constitution.
Well, let me add something in here. What was so confusing to a lot of people, the 2 big stories that came out of the Supreme Court at about the same time was abortion and this gun decision. Now, a lot of people were asking, well, wait a minute. You guys are all about giving the states their rights and letting the states decide whether abortion's legal. But as far as the Second Amendment goes, you're saying, no, the states can't dictate this. They have to adhere to this. And you did a great job of explaining, Vinny, that the constitutional right to bear arms it trumps, for lack of a better term.
Can't even use that word anymore.
Your state regulations and you could regulate things, but anything that would impede your ability to keep and bear arms. The abortion thing wasn't a right, and that's what people don't understand. It had to be handed back to the states because it couldn't be a federal right given to all people that a state couldn't then overturn.
Which, going to our sort of context provided, the reason why Anthony think that is because our schools and our government has constantly repeated the message, the lie, such and such candidate is going to take your right to abortion. And what you have to, people have to understand, those words have meaning. Those words are words of art. When you say someone has a right, we're not talking about, I have the right to get on the Xbox network and not have lag. That's not what a right means.
That would be awesome, though.
Right. And that would be in the Constitution if it was written today, I'm sure. But as much as we could argue about abortion, it is not a right anywhere listed in the Constitution. The original Roe v. Wade and some of the other decisions established the right, supposed right, based on what they felt was the shadow cast by several other constitutional amendments.
Privacy.
It wasn't specifically mentioned, but the spirit of it is such that you have a right to abortion. The logic to me always was bizarre to me, because it's like, so we're going to take the 14th, the 5th Amendment, and say, we're going to mix them all up and say, within those rights is the idea of privacy, and within privacy is bodily autonomy, and therefore gives you the right to abortion. It was never in my mind something contemplated by the forefathers. And and that's not to say, and by the way, obviously an iPhone wasn't contemplated by the forefathers. I would say that it is something that wouldn't have been established back then as a right. Contextually, where we were as a nation, that was something that was never going to make its way into the Constitution. regardless of if it was specifically argued and debated.
Right.
It was actually the opposite. It was so foregone a conclusion. Nobody would have thought to bring it up any more than you'd say a right to wear a purple wig in the Constitution. Like it was
why was it then? Why didn't they try to make abortion the right and argue that point in the Supreme Court? Instead, they had to sneak around and, like you say, pick and choose from the Fourth Amendment and other amendments that concern privacy and individual rights, because there's no fucking way you'd ever get abortion on there as an actual right.
It's right below, freedom of speech, and they're like number 2, abortion. Like, there's no when
but
you look at the
believe
Constitution, right? People believe it,
yeah.
And that's why there was so much confusion when they say, "Oh, you're willing to defer to the states." So the abortion issue is exactly that, which is that this should be a state-to-state issue. Just like I've chosen to live in the shitty state that I live in, and I have to play by the shitty rules, right? And if I want to go to another state, and eventually will go to another state that's more progressive in the areas that I think they need to be progressive, and that's my option. But the Second Amendment is not that. The Second Amendment is something that is very unequivocally enumerated as this is why it's here. This is the importance of it. The Federalist Papers lay out the all of the things that people think that weren't considered, like, oh, the better weapons, like the founding fathers were like, this is, the muskets, the peak technology. No, they understood all of that. They understood all of that.
In their lifetime, they saw weapons change in quality and performance. So what? They just thought, oh, when I was 6, I remember my dad had this gun. Now I'm signing this document, and I guess progress just won't happen like it did in my lifetime. So, yeah, sure, gun.
And they could have easily limited that. They could have easily said, with the exception of this, or the guns should not necessarily be commensurate with the weaponry of the government.
There you go.
That was the whole fucking point of it.
Not
the whole point of it was to be on par. So, Craig, going back to with that context in mind, so this thing comes out, and people are like, wow, that's pretty wild. It's a landmark decision. New York State is stuck now in California, and they're all going to have to become shall states and redesign their laws. And what does our wonderful governor do in response? Our seat warmer governor, what does she do in response?
Yeah, in 8 days, they hold a special executive session, probably in the dark of night.
like Cuomo did with the SAFE Act.
Yes, exactly. Right. Like they did with the SAFE Act. No public comment, no opportunity to review the entirety of the bill. And as you said early on in the podcast, they double down. They make it 100 times worse than it was. They basically classify the entire state as a sensitive location or a restricted zone. So you cannot carry it into a private business unless the business owner posts a sign that says your guns are welcome, which is the total opposite
of what it's supposed to. Of
49 other states that issue pistol permits. Schools, churches, places of worship, government buildings. I have a business concealed carry permit. I used to carry into the courthouse. I would tell the officer that I'm carrying. They would walk me into a back room. I'd lock it up in a safe. When I was done with my business, I get it and I leave. Now, if I try to do that, it's a felony.
Yeah. You can't even walk into the court. Just tell them I am a legal, law-abiding gun owner. I get on the floor. Get on the floor.
Right.
That's insane.
So government buildings, hospitals, places of public congregation. It's basically the entire state.
Yeah.
It's impossible. I looked at the list. Locate here, if you guys can see this, right? Locations where New Yorkers will be banned concealed carry. Can you guys see that?
Yep.
Yeah.
So, airports. All right. I'm not sure how that works.
That was always the case,
right? Well, yes and no. If I'm traveling, I mean, you're not supposed to be armed when you go in, but okay, airports, bars, restaurants that serve alcohol. I don't know a bar that doesn't serve alcohol. Kind of is a defining characteristic.
Well, some states have it's called a 51-49 rule, I think, where if 51% of the income of the facility is generated by
Good luck
alcohol.
litigating that. Good luck when you walk in and be like, are you guys 51% income generated by alcohol? I'm not sure if I can carry my gun.
Right.
So then courthouses, okay, that's always kind of federal court. Even as an agent, I wasn't allowed to bring my gun. We would check it on in the lobby, and then we'd go up to the courtroom. I'm fine with that. By the way, these are all things that have historical context to them that make them less. Daycares, playgrounds, and other locations where children gather. So if I take my kid to the playground, I have to leave my gun in the car, in a lockbox, or at home because of what? What exactly is happening at playgrounds that, like, my gun's flying off and some kids getting it on the monkey bars and shooting it up?
Right.
The precedent? Where is the history of playgrounds being really dangerous, bad people for legitimate, legal, concealed carry people? Where is that happening?
And look how vague that is too. Locations
totally vague.
Where children
gather.
So you're walking through a park. A park is a place where children, and by the way, I think park is on there in its own thing. And all of a sudden you stop and go, holy shit, I'm a gun criminal. I am now a criminal.
How about this? What if you just want to jam someone up? All you have to do is get like 8 kids, find someone you don't like, have them swarm that person.
Right.
Gather around them. He's got a gun. Kids are gathered near him. You'd be like, I was walking down the fucking street.
Yep.
Here we go. Educational institutions. Again, almost anything could qualify as an educational institution. Very many things.
Necessarily a school, right?
Emergency shelters, including domestic violence and homeless shelters. Sure. Because those are places you definitely don't want to be able to protect yourself.
Right.
As your husband's tracking you down in a domestic violence shelter. You're like, I have to leave my gun at home. Entertainment venues. Oh, well, that's not overly broad or vague.
Yeah.
Entertainment venues. Again, comedy club, outdoor comedy club, a festival. It doesn't matter. It's an entertainment venue. Federal, state, and local government buildings. So I go in to my local office to go file something. I have to now leave my gun in the car or leave it at home.
Right. Your
post office. You can't carry.
A post office. I go mail something, and some lunatic behind the counter sees a bulge, calls the cops, and next thing you know, I'm arrested because I went to the post office to mail a package, and I had my gun on me.
You're a felon.
Health and medical facilities. Oh, great. Once again, anyone at the hospital? Can't do that. Houses of worship. Yeah, because shootings don't happen in churches.
No,
that's
And now, how many church shootings have been committed by people with a licensed weapon, legally carrying, things like
None
that
I know of.
Yeah, and how many have been thwarted by people that were carrying a weapon or went and got their weapon? Remember that one case, the guy went across the street, got an AR-15 and dispatched the motherfucker.
Wasted him.
But he would have been arrested because he had entered that house of worship with a gun to take down somebody that was also breaking the rules.
Now, I believe a TRO has been issued that stays the enforcement of that aspect of the law.
Yeah. Yes. In October, a temporary restraining order was filed. A federal judge basically shat all over this legislation.
So wait a second. There's a couple of cases that are pending. One of them out of the Northern District of the state of New York, a federal judge, I think his name is Sotheby, initially dismissed the case on standing grounds, on a procedural standing ground, saying that the lead plaintiff did not have standing for a ridiculous reason. But in dicta, in discussing the merit of the case, he shat all over the law. And he said it is completely unconstitutional and for the standing issue. So what they did is they refiled the case. They addressed the standing issue. They remedied that. And then this same judge issued a temporary restraining order pending a hearing and decision, which stayed various aspects of the law. The state appealed that to the Second Circuit, and a Second Circuit judge stayed the enforcement of the TRO pending a decision from a 3-judge panel. So we are waiting for that decision right now.
I mean, look, I think that anybody not that they wouldn't. New York's crazy enough; they'll ruin someone's life, and then and every prosecutor is going to be like, "Yeah, this is totally unconstitutional." They'll still do it and ruin your fucking life. But the important thing is that the writing's on the wall that this thing, as drafted, this legislation as drafted, is total fucking garbage.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's actually doubled down on. It's worse than what went before the Supreme Court. Look at public transportation. Like I can't go to the city and carry on the subway, the place that I'm most likely to be injured.
Yeah. How would you get to the city? Most people take the train or a bus or whatever it is getting into the city. That totally goes against what the Supreme Court said, and that New York needs to allow people.
Times Square.
That
was my favorite. Public demonstrations and rallies. The court's going to look at this exactly like that. The entire import of this is that they're making it, as you said, Craig, that you can't leave the house. Because it's going to be, you're going to likely violate the law inadvertently. And so they make it so it's so difficult for law-abiding citizens that you go, fuck it, I'm never going to leave the house with my gun again. That's the whole point of it.
But I will add that that's just the tip of the iceberg. Okay, they've also imposed a 16-hour training requirement, 14 hours in the classroom, 2 hours on a range. At least initially, they did not give any standards for curriculum or what had to be in the course. And there's still people guessing, and there are a bunch of crooks charging $600 for these classes already. So there's a ridiculous training requirement. They've also, you have to disclose when applying for a permit or applying for a renewal, all of your social media accounts.
That
passwords.
So ridiculous.
How crazy is that?
Well, and this is where when people talk about fascism, when we're talking about one of the things that New York had was you had to be what was the term? Like a morally.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Can you imagine being subject to what New York State considers you being like more morally upstanding?
Yeah.
The minute they see a tweet, a Facebook post that is center.
Right. And that's what they did. They changed the terminology from showing good cause to having good moral character.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Right now they could use that.
Yeah. And you know what else? You know what else they did to protect the good people of New York from gun violence? They banned body armor.
Well, that's the real, like, how do people not see that of what it is? Body armor.
You can't buy body armor to protect yourself from a lunatic who has a gun. And that is somehow supposed to protect people. How about just make it a crime to commit a violent felony wearing body armor?
With body armor. You don't get rid of body armor. How about, again, we'll talk about domestic violence, a woman who's got a maniacal husband out there or ex-boyfriend who's demonstrated to be violent, and maybe she would like to wear body armor because going into work, she doesn't know if this nut's going to stab her or shoot her, and she's not allowed because why? It's safer for her not to wear body armor.
Like the idea that the body armor is going to make her more likely to commit mass murder. They reference in the bill, body armor such as a type worn by, I don't know if it's
the Buffalo shooter.
Holy shit. Like Nike's worn as such as the worn by the Buffalo shooter. Like what as arbitrary, the fact that he was wearing body armor doesn't mean that that is by definition a defensive piece of equipment. It has no ability to hurt you.
Yeah, Craig made a great point
defensive.
With that. Like if you do commit a violent crime and you were wearing body armor, tag that on it. Make that horrific
no
charge.
problem with that.
But you can't take it away from everybody. I mean, it's
no condoms
ridiculous.
For anybody. No vaccines, no condoms. It's totally defensive. It's if it doesn't let you know what they're really trying to do. And that's what frightens me when I talk to people is like, they're trying to make us all defenseless.
Yeah.
They're trying to make us defenseless because they're on the government for protection.
Yeah.
And when we're relying on the government, then we have to vote for them because we have no method for the thing that people need to get is that future civilizations will involve no formalized government, or government will be a fraction of what it is now. It would be some little thing. That's what because when the people finally understand that we can do this ourselves, then we don't need the government anymore. But everybody in government who has the power to make law is fighting for their existence.
They need us to need them.
To need them.
That's what it is.
So it's a completely corrupted. It's a completely when you talk about conflict of interest, you have people that are making laws that their only need for them to exist is if you need them, and they're the ones making the laws. It's a complete conflict of interest. It's so ass backwards that if people realize that what we need to start doing is pushing back on the government and saying, we want you to only exist to the extent that you have to at this point in our evolution as a species, and no more, no less. And we could take this on our own. We can to discuss interstellar space travel, space exploration. We can do it better in the private sector, and we've fucking proven that. In the last 15 years, we've proven that we can do it better, more efficiently, dare I say, maybe even make it profitable at some point. So all the things we needed government for at the beginning, which I actually think is if we find 100 civilizations out there, that's going to be a common thread. There's going to be common themes regarding religion, regarding government. They're all going to be there. But as we start to get our feet under us, I think what you're going to see is that the most advanced civilizations are going to move away from things like government because they're going to say, you don't need them. You know, it's the Dumbo, right, with the feather. You can do this on your own if you just get the courage enough to say, get the fuck out of our lives, and we'll figure this out on our own.
It's almost like if you, let's say there was some like a virus, and you talk it up and get everyone scared of it, and then you tell them they need this vaccine. It's like that kind of. I don't know if you could imagine a scenario like that.
I couldn't
imagine the people that are telling you need this, but they're the ones that initially supplied the problem for the thing you need. So it just goes around in a circle, and you keep depending on them.
Create a recession,
right?
And then get you checks based on helping you financially, but they created the problem in the first place.
They let criminals out of prison,
and
they don't let you defend them.
Don't let you defend yourself, so that you need them to protect you from them, but they're making it more dangerous for you.
Oh, imagine living in a place like this. Ooh, stop talking about it. I'm getting chills. Dystopian future.
The future is now.
Yeah, no shit, man.
1984. Today.
Well, I personally, it's going to be interesting to see as the appeal process plays out and what New York's going to do in response to this. Because
they are never going to give up. I'm talking about the people leading this thing into the ground. They will never abide by what the Supreme Court says. And just play that out in your head. What does that mean when states are no longer honoring ruling?
What they're saying exactly about the right. We don't respect the outcome of elections. We don't respect the rule of law. It's such projection, right? It's such absolute projection when you're like, wait, there was nothing but a tour. It was a campaign tour by Hillary post 2016 that this election was stolen from her.
Yeah,
and that there was Russian influence.
She said it on many shows, and there's plenty of video of investigations.
And yet they're like, but the people on the right don't respect Biden as winning because we don't respect elections. People who lean right, we don't respect the outcome of elections. January 6th.
Even the Supreme Court, they don't see that it's a legitimate court because Donald Trump appointed the judges that had tipped it over to the right, and they don't see him as a legitimate president because of the Russian. He's just a Russian pawn. So everything snowballed. So they don't feel they have to pay attention to what the fucking Supreme Court tells them.
If there were people hanging out outside Ruth Bader Ginsburg's house when she was still alive,
exactly.
or
Yes.
Sotomayor's house, threatening their lives.
Yep.
Yeah.
The Justice Department did nothing
Nothing. Yeah.
about the threats on the lives of the conservative justices. Nothing.
They
Like the Democrats have always
justify it.
done, they weaponize the Justice Department to attack their political enemies. Now, I have a lot of hope in this new case that is pending in the Second Circuit right now. It's Antonyuk and the Gun Owners of America against Bruin. I think they're on the right track. I feel like the constitutional tide has shifted in favor of the law-abiding gun owner. And, really for the first time in my life, I've always said better to be, judged by 12 than carried by 6. But this is a fight legally that I would be willing to fight now.
Yeah.
I have tattooed on my chest, Molin Labe, come and take him. And how can I just go quietly into the night at this point, now that the Supreme Court has said what New York State is doing is unconstitutional? I feel like as a citizen, as a law-abiding, tax-paying citizen, a veteran, a patriot, that the time is now, and I can only encourage people who are listening this to get out there and vote. It's critical.
I mean,
critical.
Yeah, especially a lot of people think about the big offices and the big votes and that, but I mean local level, you got to look at all this stuff. I have no doubt that we're still going to be saddled with Chuck Schumer because people are just stupid. The guy's holding the job like the Pope, and he really he needs to go. His whole mindset and that they've been there forever, politician, just get him out.
Did you hear who they're looking to replace Pelosi now? Schiff. Schiff.
Oh God!
Is that monster going to be any better?
No, and I don't think he's another just fossil.
Talk about
that
conspiracy
looks like
theories.
He's on death's door.
Yeah. He's pushed conspiracy theories for the last how many years? I've got evidence of this and that, and never.
Remember when he said that? Oh, we
everything.
got evidence about Donald
We've
Trump.
Got it. We've heard it. We've this and that.
Listen,
nothing.
Mitch McConnell has no business running the Republican Party either. But these are the guys that generate the most money from donors who have been bought and sold, and this is how they maintain power.
That's how they keep getting elected. Yeah, they get money from these groups and industry and they
distribute it.
Yeah.
Also.
That they're the ones that get to dole out the jobs and the contracts.
Stuff. We're in a lot of trouble.
Clarice. Quid pro quo.
Well, we didn't even get to. We'll have to save it for another show, but that really leads us into the Ukraine or the conflict and this proxy war in the middle of. And by the way, it all connects to the Second Amendment, all that stuff. That's exactly what the Ukraine is experiencing. Anthony, you were talking about earlier about the use of those types of weapons. There's no doubt. We'll save this for another show, but that Russia, if they wanted to, could end this conflict tomorrow, right? With nuclear weapons.
You would
think,
right.
There's a reason he's not doing it. And it's the reason you said, which is that it's so distasteful. It's so disgusting. It's so over the top that a country with a fraction of the population that Ukraine has as compared to Russia is in a dogfight with a superpower and by many accounts winning. Well, how is that possible? And that's exactly like we talked about. Because they're arming the population, because they're making this a war of attrition, and that's putting Putin in a really bad spot. And Craig, I definitely wanted to talk to you about that because I know you have some really great insight into all that, but we'll have to save that for another show.
Sure.
We're running real long. Anthony, thanks, man, for coming on and talking through this stuff. So much fun.
Man. I love it. I love having you on my show. We have some good conversations, fun, and getting the word out there to people that I don't know, because it could get boring for people as far as politics. I don't mean the shows, but I mean just politics. People they just accept what they see and think that's what's going on. And both sides put out bullshit, and it's really your responsibility as an American, as a citizen, to do some research, look at all the angles, and use some what we talk about all the time, Vinny, deductive reasoning, like your ability to filter things through your head and use your experience and your knowledge and your intelligence to go, that doesn't sit with me, that doesn't sound right, this I could see this, use a little Occam's razor. There's a whole bunch of things where you can be educated,
engaged,
knowledgeable, and not just suck up and regurgitate the shit you see on mainstream media.
And it might not change your ultimate outcome.
Maybe not.
But your position will be much more defendable and well thought out.
Right.
And that's the whole point of it.
You'll be able to have a reasonable
discussion,
civil discussion, instead of just losing and calling the person an asshole.
Asshole or a racist or this
right,
or that.
Right,
you can actually have a discussion. That's that's the whole thing I encourage people to do. Is that you might not change your mind, but if you give me an argument and I give you a counter argument and you go, fuck you, you're an idiot. Well, what's the point of this then? Like, so
don't you have so much more respect for somebody
when
they actually did their homework? We would like talking about quickly the gun issue. I said this to Vinny so many times. I have never seen a more ignorant group of people than anti-gun, anti-Second Amendment. They know nothing of the laws. They know nothing of the mechanics of a gun. They don't know how they work.
Have a fully automatic weapon.
A fully automatic. You could buy them at 7-Eleven. I wish it was as easy to get this than a gun. Like all this shit because they're stupid. Ghost gun. It's all shit that they just. And they don't want to know it. They'd rather just call you a right-wing fanatical gun nut, and then they don't have to learn about it.
They don't have to think about it. Exactly.
Right.
It makes it so that they don't have to go through the show your work phase of problem solving. They just go, the answer's 15, and you go, yeah, but 15 doesn't make it. They're 15, you asshole. Yeah. You're like, you're like, no, but it's 15. You can't get 15 from that. And I'm just saying, show me your work. And this is the thing. Like, I've changed my philosophical stance on concealed carry for civilians, on abortion, on a lot of issues that I felt very differently about when I was younger, because I came across people who made articulate, well-formulated arguments that left me thinking after the conversation was done, how do I account for that? How do I answer this and that? Because that's not consistent. And really, is it about that, or is it about this? And then I go, oh shit, maybe I'm a little bit wrong in the way I think. And then when you talk to other people and they're like, hey, we've just been brainwashed into saying this is what it is. Like, I fucking watched an hour and a half of flat earther videos 2 weeks ago just to make sure, am I a fucking asshole? Maybe, what if I am wrong? And then I left after that and I said, I did the counter research and I said, no, Earth is still spherical. It's still spherical. I'm not wrong. These people are fucking idiots. But I gave it an hour and a half of my night because I saw some compelling NASA videos of where balls dropped to the floor or water didn't float, or I posted one the other day, women's hair, sticking up. And I threw it out there and I said, it is weird, right? Because in real zero gravity or near zero gravity, women's hair tends to be kind of flowy. In some of these videos NASA has out there, it's like they have gel. They look like something about Mary, right? They caught a load and their hair is like spiked up. And I'm like, can you explain that? And we had a discussion. People said it's different hair types. It could be hair products. And that all makes sense. You're like, yep, that's probably, it's filthy hair, greasy hair, dirty hair. But again, open-minded enough to go, this one got me. This hair thing, it got me that night. I go, the hair thing's fucking pissing me off. Right, I'm looking into that. But that's the thing, is like keeping that sort of like challenging. I look forward to getting great arguments back from people that make me think. I just get mad that when I make great arguments, that I'm more likely to receive an accusation of being something I'm not. To totally just diffuse the argument, or dismantle my argument by calling me a name or an accusation. And I'm like, but that's not how debate works. Well, debate doesn't work that way.
It works both ways. And you were just saying, it's easier to change hearts and minds by having an intelligent discussion with somebody, like you said. And I agree. I have had opinions that had changed over the course of time, just because I think differently as an older guy, and having discussions, reasonable, nice, civil discussions with people and it can change your mind. But the other side sometimes seems to approach it with they don't want to hear anything from you. They're afraid,
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah,
a
it's
lot of times
uncomfortable.
that they'll hear something and go, oh no, wait a minute, maybe he is right. Maybe I am wrong. Maybe. So they just rather shut you down. That's why we see people like Gavin McInnes and Ann Coulter and Alex Stein being shut down at these universities. It doesn't mean so much to keep someone from speaking. What they're doing is presenting people from hearing. They don't want you to hear them and go, wait, they've been telling us these are animals and monsters. He sounds pretty reasonable. That's what it is.
Yeah.
It's not so much impeding their speech. It's impeding your ability to listen and work things out for yourself.
You're so right.
So, yeah.
You're so right on that. It's really about keeping you from hearing it. They don't
that's the
want
whole purpose of
the
censorship.
dots connected. And
It's
that's
easier
exactly
to shut a mouth
it.
than it is a 200 ears.
Your
you know?
ears.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's
And
easier to
you're
just
exactly
shut
right,
one
Craig.
mouth.
That's the point of the censorship is we'll do the thinking for you.
Yep.
We'll do, and we've heard that from the
Crazy.
media, by the way, in the last 5 years, right? How many times on hot mics we're supposed to tell you what to think?
Oh my God! Right. I
mean, these
tell
fucking
you.
people.
Don't read it
tell you
yourself.
what to think.
Yeah. Don't read
That's
it yourself.
our job.
We'll read it for you and break it down.
Tell you what to think
about Russian documents. Remember that with Trump? And it's like this was released, and they go, "Yeah, don't read that yourself. We'll break it down and make it easy for you." And no, how about I read it myself?
Unbelievable. I want to chew my own food.
Yeah, chew my own food. Right.
Chew my own food. Thank you. I'm not a baby bird. All right, gents. It's pretty late. Well, for me, what is it? Yeah, 10:30. You guys enjoy the rest of your night. Thanks everybody for listening in,
Ben.
and we'll do this again soon.
Good
Thanks
seeing
everybody.
you guys.
Later.
Take care.
Good night.